I think Skype 1.0 and
Yeah,
not
we're being
14.
recorded here. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So do you want me to just dive in, Wally, and people for sure um, fire questions my way. Um, if you have any, stop at any time. I'll just give you a sort of the quick sort of soup to nuts on our experience. I mean, it's been 2 years now for me. In fact, I had my cell phone pop up what I was doing 2 years ago, the day of the qualification game, and 2 years previous, we are in Slovakia at our first event with the Danish girls, and at that time, Peter and I, getting our first look at the team, kind of thought, like our goaltending, which is always a good thing, always a good thing. Uh, Not bad up front. You know, our top six, pretty good, like pretty competitive. Blue line, not sure about the blue line. Couple of good solid ones, maybe.
Who needs good defense ever? Really, who needs that?
And you know, in fairness, we're missing a couple of the girls who are playing in the NCAA for that event. But anyway, at that time, I kind of thought, well, you know, pretty good group. I really liked the group as people. And so we've been now marching for 2 years. And as I said to Peter at the time when the first World Championship was canceled, as much as we were hoping to play because we thought we could take some people by surprise, like we were planning to play a really aggressive forechecking game and really aggressive penalty killing game, and people didn't really know anything about us. As much as we wanted to take people by surprise, it was a good thing for us because we were dealing with a couple of injuries. One, not injury, but one happy event that one of our girls had just given birth and would not, about 4 months previous, and would not have been able to play. And those injuries and Julie being not able to come to Halifax with us would have really hurt our depth a lot, because we actually grew as a group to where I really liked our team. We added a few players. Players improved, of course, over 2 years, and we really feel like we've got a really good, solid group of forwards now. We've even got a few young players and a few players we left at home that really could be in the mix. And so we've got a really 5 lines we can mix and match. And we feel that we could play with anybody, maybe not getting scoring from all those lines, but competitiveness for sure. And our defense all grew immensely. And we had one other, we had 2 reclamation projects, if you will. Julie Østegard Gregerson, she had retired 3 or 4 or 5 years ago from the national team. She and her partner had have 2 kids in the interim, and she was the one that would have missed Halifax. And she is like a Michael Backlund type, really good, speedy, gritty, energetic forward who just can play in a lot of situations for us. Really helped our depth and our team speed. And then Simona Jacquet, a big, 6-foot defenseman who as well had retired. I'm not sure how long ago, but 3, 4, 5 years ago. And Peter convinced her to come back on not the promise, of course, but the prospect of possibly playing in the Olympics and, of course, playing in the A pool. So those 2 players really helped add to our depth. Both of them moms and with 2 kids. And the best story is going to the end of the story. I was talking to Simona in the airport the other day, and I was saying I forgot to mention in our post-game meetings the other day that you guys are all pioneers now, and you're going to be trailblazers, and we're all hoping there's a bunch of 7 and 8-year-old girls in Denmark who now want to play hockey. And she said, my 7-year-old said to me last night, Mom, I want to play on the national team too. So we really hope we see a bump in registration in Denmark. They love their hockey there. The Federation has been incredibly supportive of our efforts for the last 2 years. I don't even know, double, triple, quadruples their spending on the team. Even taking COVID out of the mix and the extra expenses there, they have been really, really supportive. So that's terrific to see. And Barry will be pretty interested to hear the story that we're a classic example, and I related this to Wally yesterday, of the sports psych team building concept of forming, norming. Yes, there was storming, and finally performing last week. A terrific group for me from day one. A really great leadership group. We really felt we had really good people and really good players who were leading the way for us. We're like in the norming part in terms of building the team, we really focused on 2 or 3 things really early. None of them earth-shattering, none of them surprising. Right first meeting, in Slovakia and before Slovakia, effort was number one. Effort areas, and I think I've shared that document that we did use with Hockey Canada as well, Sammy, if you might remember. So effort areas and work ethic and being positive and being resilient were sort of the backbone of our team building effort. And really, in one of the first meetings, our team manager, Klaus, who's works for the Federation, does all the team management stuff for the men's program as well. He did a presentation really early on, a sports psych presentation, and he talked about believing and hitting the believe button whenever you're ready to go to practice or into battle in a game or whatever it is. And we took that concept, and we actually had I made up a believe button that we laminated and stuck on the locker room door. And then before the World Championship, one of our team leaders who had a daughter on the team, she had a friend who actually made a embroidered believe button that we stuck up in the locker room that everybody pounds every time we go out on the ice. So sort of positivity, work ethic, and everything was the mantra. We knew we were good enough to be competitive, but we were going to have, as many women's teams, female teams do, trouble scoring. But that's okay. It's just part of the effort. So that was sort of the norming phase, and it was all going extremely well. We came to Worlds here, and that's where the storming part sort of had its roots. And I think the biggest problem was that as coaches, my feet were firmly on the ground. And I think I've said it to all of you many times. We really felt that we could come to Worlds and win 4 games if we got lucky. But we could also come to Worlds and play really well and lose 4 games. I'm not sure the same thinking was in the minds of the girls, because in our minds, we played, including our exhibition game against Germany. I think we surprised the hell out of them, taking them to a shootout in the exhibition game. And then we really felt against the Czechs, Japan, and even the second game against Germany, we played pretty well, notwithstanding some glaring turnover errors that were kind of uncharacteristic for us. But, that can happen, and you set some of those things aside. As a coach, I really felt, well, you know what? Disappointing. We didn't win any of those games, but we played pretty well. And that's the main thing, as we know as coaches, is can't control the outcomes. But then we had our final game in the tournament against Hungary, and then we played a subsequent exhibition game against Hungary. And the history for everyone, we played Hungary, Lisa's team. Lisa's done a terrific job with that team. We've played Lisa's team 5 times in the last year and a bit. And we've beaten them 4 times, but every one of them was a 1-goal game, couple in overtime. And I think the girls' kind of mindset was, well, we should beat Hungary. And we were totally capable of beating Hungary, but like everybody else, we have to do the work and put the work in, and then get a bounce or two, puck luck wise, because it's that close. And our goaltending was a factor. Our penalty killing was not good at the tournament. That's my area. Full responsibility, full disclosure, was not good. Anyway, so coming out of Worlds, there was a pretty significant group of players that were really, really disappointed and were really questioning really the coaching leadership. And it was a really tough month to 6 weeks between Worlds and the qualifier. And without going into lots of details, but I give the group full credit for showing up in Copenhagen. We made a few little changes, and I can go into some of the problems, but we made a few little changes with how we were going about things. But I was really concerned, like we had a divided group. We had Team A and Team B, much like the US team, I believe, had all the way through the Sochi or the Pyeongchang Olympic year. There are all kinds of reports that they were a completely divided group. And I give sort of the disaffected group on our team, unsatisfied group, full credit for showing up and being totally professional. A couple of weeks ago, it was like nothing happened. Like Peter and I did a lot of work with them. Our sports psych advisor, Knut Ralm, terrific fellow. He was instrumental in doing lots of discussions with the leadership group and the players who were a little unsatisfied. And when we came together in Copenhagen, day one, we would normally practice. Peter and I decided we're not going on the ice. The other 2 assistant coaches, 3 assistant coaches, including Ernst, the goalie coach, they'd go on the ice with some of the girls, and we would work ourselves through 15, 20-minute meetings with all the players. It took us about 5-6 hours the whole day, just to discuss their strengths and weaknesses, their role on the team. Yes, you can expect some power play time. No, you can't unless something happens. Yes, you can expect penalty killing time or maybe limited rule. We discussed with the goalies our plan going into the 2 exhibition games with the Czechs. We told one of the goalies, you're number 3, you're not going to play unless there's an injury. And this was kind of at the request of the players. They felt like going into Worlds, a lot of their role designation was not crystal clear to them. And again, full disclosure and responsibility on my part, even being the experienced coach that I am, really all of the games previous to the World Championship, I can almost say I never sat a player for an error, never matched lines, very, very rarely changed the rotation of the D, just basically let them roll, And going into Worlds, we had a thought process that, a lot of the teams we were playing had one good line, sometimes 2, but the Czechs have 3 or 4 pretty skilled lines. But so we went in with a mentality to maybe match lines a little bit, get our best, what we thought were our strongest defensive pair out, have a backup pair behind them, and go strength on strength. You play our top forward line against their top forward line and have kind of a secondary unit. But we didn't take enough time before Worlds to really go through that with the D in particular for me, that there was going to be some rotation, there was going to be some matchup. We did it in the exhibition game. Anyway, so we made some pretty serious errors as coaches, and we changed all that going into the qualifier, and it really was of great benefit. Having the goalies fully understand who number 3 is, and they were there to watch unless there was an injury. We went in saying to the defense, we've got a top 6. Number 7, you're not going to play unless something happens, and some sort of injuries and things intervened, so we had to actually change the plan. But I think it really helped the girls just kind of focus on their jobs and know where they fit. And I got totally comfortable going into Worlds. The girls played so well against the Czechs as a group on the blue line that I got comfortable again saying, okay, look, we're going to try to match our top pair. We've got a second pair that's going to go behind them against the top line. But I'm other than that, I'm just basically rolling the defense, and they performed extremely well. So I think Sammy had her hand up first. Go ahead, Sammy, and then Wally.
So I'm curious about the roles, Tim. I think that that's very humble of you to say that is your coaching error. But I struggled with this being the GM when I was with the Furies. Simply time. So do you think that it was because you guys are not together all the time that there just wasn't enough time? Like, there's so much teaching you want to get across. There's so much. I found with the Furies that it was almost like something I wanted to eventually get to, but there's so many other things going on in that short amount of time. So do you feel like then eventually post Worlds, you just had more time to disseminate that knowledge, or like, do you think it was a conscious thing, or for those of us that are in the situation that you're in without the amount of time, how do you do that?
Yeah, and that is an interesting question, Sammy, and it was a little bit of everything. Like we did not have as much time with our group as we would like. Do we ever as coaches, I guess? But coming into Worlds, like I think they had a 3-day camp in Copenhagen. I didn't even go over for it. A lot of the teams were together for 10 days, 2 weeks before Worlds, and then came in here. So partly it was a time crunch thing. I would be honest to say as well that, too many times, I guess, as coaches, we make assumptions that, people kind of know where they fit in and what their roles are. But so it was a very conscious decision going into the qualifier, like I said, to make the time to do it, especially because the girls asked for it. They wanted to know it. So it's like, okay, it's on us. We got to deliver that. So as hard as...
Well, they had all read the book, The Role I Played, right? So now they had this idea of roles, right?
Now I'm coming through the screen at you. You're the reason we had
That's
6 weeks of hell, like whatever. And obviously, and I'll be honest too, like in case anyone is listening, like it was kind of 6 weeks of hell for Peter and I, but it was 6 weeks of real discomfort for the players who were unhappy as well. Like it was definitely a two-way street. They felt like there were some things that needed to be done to help us be at our best, and so I'm not saying anyway, but. Yeah, so we made.
But like you said, I think that storming part was probably so integral, right, to the end, and forced you guys to really think about those next steps. So you're very humble in taking on a lot of the onus, but I think that's what probably made you and Peter so successful too, is that you guys really acknowledge that. A lot of coaches wouldn't have done that. So that's amazing to see with a team like that you guys were able to go through all of that together. And I'm sure the girls in the end appreciated it.
Yeah, and that's another interesting point, Sam, because I just finished Haley's book the other night, and anybody out there listening, if you want to read along with Sammy's book, which is top notch as well, Haley's book is really terrific, and she touches on that, Sammy, about coaches who are afraid or unwilling or unable to admit when they make mistakes. It's
Yeah, I read her book too, and I loved how honest she was. I thought it was so humbling on Wick's part. She talks a lot about how she grew and what she's learned, and I agree with you. I think that it is a great read for anybody not outside of the sports world as well.
Yeah.
But go
Yeah.
on. I digress. I've interrupted enough. You keep going.
No, that's okay. Like, because I totally agree. It's a great book for anybody. I mean, almost should be mandatory reading for athletes of all stripes. So much in it. Does such a great job comparing her hockey to her medical career, and all the lessons that transfer back and forth. Really, really terrific. But anyway, so we did make a conscious decision. Very hard for us as coaches to not go on the ice and not work with our players. But Peter and I just thought, okay, sort of money well spent. We'll take the 6 hours to meet with everybody, let them go on the ice and do some skill work with the other coaches, and then subsequent, we met with them individually twice after that. Once in the Czech Republic, we played 2 exhibition games there against Thomas's team. We were there for 4 days. We checked in with them in the Czech Republic. Then when we got to Fusten, we checked in again just to see how things are going. Hey, we like this. You need to be better here. Has your role changed at all? No, yes. So we made the effort to really communicate with them so they really knew where they stood. And I think, again, that was really, really helpful to them. And I guess, who knows? The proof's in the pudding. But again, the girls deserve a ton of credit. Like, we were watching really carefully every meal, every walk to the rink, every warm up. Our eyes were like, okay, how are the 2 groups going? Are they 2 groups? And there was no evidence of it. We didn't really know who most of the disaffected players were. There were a couple that were pretty out front. And we knew that because, a small group of them decided to write a letter to the Federation, just sort of asking for help or assistance. But there was zero evidence of a divide in the group from day one, which was terrific. And we, and I guess, again, the proof is in the pudding. Like, they deserve a ton of credit for that. Peter deserves a medal for kind of fighting through all this. I honestly don't know if I'd have been him as the head coach, if I'd have been able to get there, because there was a point sort of 3 weeks to a month after Worlds where it's like, we don't know if we're going to go back. We don't know if they're going to have us back, and we don't know even if they wanted us back, were we going back? So it was a pretty serious sort of existential crisis for the team, but they all came through it with flying colors. So, Wally, go ahead. You've been very patient. And you're muted there. You're muted there too, Wally.
Tim, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I'm watching everybody's faces and body language as you speak, and the relevance of what Tim's talking about to me is so important, because those of you that are actively involved in coaching or mentoring coaches, as Kim is, everything he's talking about goes on with your team. And I was going to interrupt earlier about Barry, and he's been through a short-term process. Tim is involved in a short-term process. It's not your club team all season with helicopter parents dealing with situations that come up. And I just hope that everybody takes, keeps that in mind, because the lessons that Tim got out of this are the same lessons every one of you that are still actively coaching or mentoring coaches have to remind yourself of as you coach and as you mentor the coaches you coach. It's just so important. It's not like he's come on, yeah, he's talking about women's hockey and the worlds, and you could be talking to an NHL team right now. And you could be talking to a AA team or a minor hockey team. It's the same thing. And the biggest thing I find with Kim, and you might be able to speak to this, the ability of Tim and Peter and the staff to take the time to talk, communicate with their players appeared to be where the level of understanding and trust was created. And I don't know that that's occurred with Mike, your team, Jordan, your team, or Kim, all of the teams in your association. And if it's not possible, it maybe has to become more of a priority, that communication piece, because if not, you're going to spin your wheels and come back to square one and possibly not get your job back if you're a coach.
So true, Wally, and Mike, I'll get to you in one sec, just sort of following up again on Sammy's question about, how do you take the time, make the time? And, it was really infinitely more difficult for us in a short-term situation and arguably more important, I suppose. But, I can't emphasize enough for all of you out there coaching your teams. Like, the season is long. As much as we all think we don't have enough time with our teams, whether we practice twice a week or 4 times a week, we all get so focused on everything we want to teach them, whether it's skills or systems or whatever it is. But take the time, make the time. And the sidebar story is, like, when I was at University of Vermont, I really got to the point where I felt like I would gladly take a day off practice every week if we could find a way to fill that time and use that time to have meaningful communication discussions. But for my focus then was some sports psych fundamentals for the girls at Vermont, because it's so important. We all know the on ice piece is very important, but the whole mental side, whether it's knowing your role, your expectation, being able to manage your inner thoughts and your self-talk or whatever it is, that whole mental side is so important. Just make the time, take the time to do it with your teams. So go ahead, Mike, and then Kim's got a question too. Not surprising.
Yeah. Well, Kim, I'll defer to you because it came up from Wally, so I'd love to hear your answer, and then I'll chime in.
I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that comment, Tim. It's fine. Hi, everyone. I've been gone for a while, but I'm
all good questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. Well, I only went to Dartmouth, so I'm slow. I think, when you mentioned it, Tim, I thought everyone, like, perception is reality, right? So what the parents see or what the players see, that's their reality. And I think as a coach, you're too much in the thick of it. And sometimes you can't see those things. You're so worried about maybe the value that player brings, or what, which way they shoot on the power play, or how many goals they're going to score. It's very easy to get lost in those trees. I've been lost in those trees. That's a cool thing about my role now. I just get to come in and be like, hey, I'll do this. And I'm kind of, the fixer, which is fun. And of course, the parents have the rose-colored glasses, right? And they're seeing their kid myopically for what they do and maybe not as a whole. But one thing I've seen that's really interesting this year is a lot more of our coaches have been having not just team meetings, but meetings with the parents involved, which at some of our higher levels, I was actually questioning whether that was a smart move. So at our junior level, our midget AA level, having meetings with the parents in the room. They've all gone extremely well. I guess I shouldn't have been nervous. I haven't been in any of the meetings. But I do think, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this, seems to be a different level of anxiety or stress amongst the players and the parents in the year that has been missed. And sort of this urgency to do more and be more and execute more. And the coaches have found that those parent meetings have kind of helped to ease everyone's stress a little bit, and just that clear communication of what we're doing and where we are. So it's interesting for me, not being a coach this year, my instinct was like, oh my God, don't have the parent meeting. It's nothing good's going to come of it. But actually every single one of them, and I have run 2 parent meetings for teams thus far, but they've all been extremely well received and have really set the team on the right path. So again, for the coaches out there who kind of look at the parent meeting as a big scary thing, it seems in this climate it's much more valuable than maybe it's been in years past.
Cool. Go ahead, Mike, and then Jordan.
Yeah, so I love. I mean, for the last couple of years, that's really been a focus of mine as a coach. But I coach at the youth level now. I'm not coaching college anymore. I'm not coaching. I did coach with the Whale a little bit, and that was fun because you got to see these women and be able to communicate with them as adults. But when you're talking with children, you almost got to be. I'd like to hear a little bit of how you approached these women when you were talking to them about what their role is and how you felt about them. Because I'd find when you're talking to 14-year-old boys or 11-year-old boys and you're communicating to them, you're really communicating to the parent, right? You're like, I use a program called Power Player, which is just it's just a communication tool. So I log in and I have all the kids there and I can kind of give them my feedback week to week. Hey, you're playing great. You're doing this. I need you to do this more. This is why I didn't like what you did in the third period, but you can improve this, or your body language is bad. But I always find that I have to, and I'd like to hear your view on this. It's almost like I don't want to give too much information because sometimes I'm bringing up stuff that they didn't even think they were doing wrong. They're like, well, I thought actually everything was going pretty well. And I think just, hearing more about how much you're letting the player, I don't know if venting is the word, but letting the player give their feel about what they think their role is, and then you massaging that to help you and your team.
Well, it's a very good question, Michael. And I think it's really important. I've had more than a few discussions. There's a couple of things that are going through my head. Number one is honesty, that really every player wants, and really deep down, every parent wants, even though it might be painful. Like, they want to know how to get better. They want to know how they can get more ice time, play more, whatever it is. So the honesty piece is really important. And I'm pretty sure Wally's sitting there thinking, and I did for sure with the D actively, after we had our initial meeting, when we were touching back with players after the first 2 games against the Czechs, the first thing out of my mouth was, hey, how did you think things went for you in the games? Like, it's so important that they develop the ability to self-evaluate. And of course, with 13, 14-year-olds, it's going to be a long, slow process. But it's really good to start it by saying, hey, how did you play last night? 5 is I cannot possibly play better. 1 is I cannot possibly play worse. Everybody starts at 3. Average game, could be better, could be. And then, so where do you think you were? And it's really interesting, even, as terrific a lot of these women we're coaching, how they haven't keenly, in lots of cases, developed that sense yet. And I was really happy when I had a discussion with 2 of the defensemen. Well, 2 of them in particular, like after those 2 Czech games, they were like bang on. So what do you think? Where were you? And they were both bang on in terms of how they thought they played or could be better or whatever it was. So that was a rewarding thing. But the honesty piece, can't be, sometimes you have to package it the right way. in a positive way. And again, I try to start with, hey, I really like this about your game. I really like this about your game. I really like this about your game. There's a couple things I think you can do to be even better. Instead of saying, hey, I don't like this. I don't like that. Well, you did this in the third period. I mean, open the door to the communication by starting with some positives and then have a discussion with the players about, and then, the other thing we did was the players said they wanted more video. So we borrowed sort of a coaching tool from, I think it's the Denmark volleyball team. Their coaches have an open hour of, I know this isn't available obviously to a lot of minor coaches, but we have video of all our games. The day after the game, we've got an hour every morning where the 4 assistant coaches are all sitting with their computers. Anybody can wander down and say, hey, you know what, I'd like to get your opinion on this, or I want to see this, or I want to see that. And so we gave them some more feedback. And even as coaches, we're kind of relentlessly positive in all of our video sessions up to this point, like basically really exclusively looking for situations where we were doing things really well and just saying, hey, we need to see more of this. This is exactly what we want. Back checking, forechecking, in terms of puck battles, in terms of races, in terms of battling for rebounds. And those open video sessions actually allowed us to sort of get the door open to more critical or constructive feedback where they wanted to see a situation that maybe they made a mistake in. And again, if they came to me and said, hey, I'd like to see this, like, I turned the puck over here, I want to see, my first question in all those sessions would be, okay, and this is my process for self-evaluation that everybody's heard before, and it comes from a great sports psych book I read, is approach, outcome, response. Approach, what were you trying to do? Oh, I was trying to hit the center up the middle. So what happened? Well, it got intercepted. Okay, so what can you do next time? Approach, what are you trying to do? Outcome, what happened? Response, what can you do better next time? Well, I can pass it harder. I can chip it off the boards. I can use my D partner. But make them or ask them to evaluate in those situations, and that helps them, I think, learn. So,
yeah, I think the Kim's point, just real quick, sorry, but I think the Kim's point, I mean, that's something I changed like 3 years ago, that my mentality of, back when I was first started to coach, I'm Mike Benelli, welcome to the season, see you at the banquet. Like, don't call me, don't come to my office, don't, and I think that's it's just changed over, 20, 30 years, that, the more I can get the parents involved, the more they can be in meetings, the more they can hear my philosophy and how I want to help their kids, the more they be, especially at the youth level, like the parents aren't dropping their kids off and not seeing them for 6 months, so we're a team. And I think, actually Wally, the reason I'm even in this call is because of Wally's presentation that he gave to a group that I was with, that really just solidifies like my own coaching philosophy and program philosophy, that the more we can educate our parents with our kids, the more we can get them on the same team as us. And I think that once they understand that by them hurting me in the car, they're only hurting their kid. And the more I can communicate with them in a positive way, that listen, there are going to be conflicts. There are going to be times that I don't, think that your player is playing at their highest level or understanding the concepts that we need to teach, but we can do this together and make this a better environment for all of us, right? Because I think like you're saying, you're getting your girls in the room and like, listen, we want to win. So what can we do to help us win? Well, the only thing we can do is tell you what you need to do, and and the only thing that really matters is what do the head coaches think your responsibilities are. It doesn't matter what you think your responsibilities are until you tell us. So I think it's a great way to approach it. But I think at the youth hockey level, it's even more important to get the parents as much information about what you think about their kids, because they're the ones that have to advocate for you all the time.
Yeah,
Mike, I'm
great.
sorry to interrupt, but I all the time, I never connected to Power Play, the program that appears to enhance that communication and building a trust relationship with parents and players. And I've even thought, and I've forgotten about this. Jordan, you got to be on Power Play. Tim, would Power Play work for you and the Norwegian players? You wouldn't have parent interference. And Mike, that's what I'm going to ask you is that particular program, how would it work at a college level or a national team level, considering his circumstance? You know the tool, you know how you used it. I've tried to convince associations here to get a deal on the program, but to experiment with it. But all I see here is it's a no-brainer for the communication piece, which is more important than everything else.
Yeah, so the college level and sometimes the pro level, you're communicating with your kids. I mean, there's nothing better than face to face, right? There's absolutely nothing better than being in the room with a player. But I find at the youth hockey level, and I use this with I do a lot of work with Tim with Stavanger youth hockey in Norway as well. And when they talk about girls, I mean they have hundreds and hundreds of girls in their little minor league youth hockey program. But a lot of it is at the youth level. It's the communication, Wally, of what I think we're doing, right? This is why we do this. This is why we do this. This is how I see you. And this Power Player program, which I kind of fell into, gives me the opportunity to, share video to the whole team and annotate that. And guess who's watching that? Really? It's mom and dad are watching that, right? They're watching that and saying, see, I told you coach thought this, or because most of these parents don't know. They don't know what to do I had a debate the other day with the goalie's dad saying the goalie in a 2-on-1 always wants their defenseman to take the shooter, like go after the shooter. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you've given up 7 goals that the players crossed the puck across the crease and they had an open net. So let's rethink that a little bit, right? Especially at the youth level. But I think, Wally, to your point, it's just a tool that I found that gives me the best chance to communicate in real time at the easiest way, right? Because I just do it on my phone. I just say, hey, Timmy, great game last night. I loved your effort. Keep that up. Boom, done. It's done. It's there. It's to the player and they have it and they feel like, oh, wow, that coach communicated with me. And now I can move on to the next thing. And when I send a video out, it's and I don't do a lot of, I don't do team video. Like I know when I grew up, I'd sit in a room, right? And the coach would just say, you're doing this, you're doing this. Hey, you're doing this. And you're in this huge auditorium. And now, you're able to send this. I just send out little 15, 25-second clips. And they get it, they digest it, and then we move on from there. But it's just, for me, it's building trust. It's building a way that players know that I'm communicating with them and I want them to communicate back with me. But I don't have the time. I don't have 6 hours at the rink. I have 50 minutes on the ice with the kids, and then they're all getting in their cars and running home. So I've got to find ways to communicate with them sometime, when they're in the car on the way home, right? I can communicate with them this way now. Which helps me the next time they come back to the rink. But yeah, it's a great program.
And excuse me, Jordan, you're next, but is it Power Play or Power Player?
The Power Player. Yeah, so it's Power Player. And I could put it in the chat. Wally's worked with these guys in the past. They do a lot of work with the coaches site and actually I do a lot of work with Tim. I think you might have coached Mike Weaver for a little bit, but
I did.
Yeah. So Michael,
we had a presentation too, right? From them. Is that right? To the Sharks group?
Yes.
I wasn't on that, but maybe.
Yes, he did. We had the gentleman do a presentation on it. Yep.
Yeah. So Mike Weaver's, Mike and I do a lot of work together with the coach them. And so I take all my lesson plans and that's how I share them. I share them through Power Player and all the parents know, why the hell is Benelli? Oh, sorry, I didn't see your daughter there. Well, how is Benelli doing this? Why is he doing this drill? And I go, well, this is why. Here, you're seeing it. You're seeing my verbiage, my description, the key points, what I'm looking for. So when you're watching your son, in my case, on the ice, you know what I'm trying to teach. It might not look like something you like. It might not look like, we're breaking out, but we are breaking out. We're working on area passes. We're working on cutting and lanes and angles. And I communicate that through that system. And that, again, and you could do it if I was coaching a team full time and I had, an hour a day of classroom time, I would probably use it that way, but I don't. So I have to find alternate ways to, kind of manufacture that.
Oh, please say hello to Mike for me. Like,
I don't
really
want to. He talks too long. He talks too much. If I get on the phone, I'm stuck for a couple hours. But
great person, as you know, and really, really, really terrific player. I have some good Mike Weaver stories, or one in particular when I was with Atlanta and he was with us there, but terrific player. Jordan, you've been very patient. Some would say St. Jordan is up now.
I've been told that I have patience, but it's never been by anybody that is in my own family. So I don't know how that quite works. I'm usually more patient with other people's children than I am with anybody that's close to me. So, Tim, I just want to thank you for all the conversation this morning and actually sparking the conversation going around the way it is right now about communication and all of those pieces. And yeah, we're not using the power player with my team, but a thing that I learned quite a while ago was sending out a weekly update email to my entire team. It's aimed at the players, but of course I know with sending it out via Team Snap that every parent gets it too. So I always use the verbiage and everything that it's directed at the players themselves, speaking to the player, but knowing that mom and dad are doing that. And then all of my practice plans go up on that site as well, open to everybody. And the practice plans go up usually 24 hours before every practice, with the expectation, of course, to the kids that they look at them, but I know they don't, because I get them, they post them in the dressing room before every practice too. And I know that there's some that are scrambling to look at them as they're walking towards the ice, so it's all good. Or at least I tell them that you can fake it by getting to the back of the line if it's a new drill, so that you're not killing the drill right off the bat. So those pieces. But what sparked what I wanted to mention was actually Kim, in talking about parents and parents' expectations coming out of COVID, or the year last year that people see as a lost year. And we see it, of course, in schools where people are saying that how are we going to catch these kids up? These kids are so far behind, and that. And last week I had the opportunity of working with a gentleman by the name of Kevin Cameron, who's the executive director of the North American Center for Threat Assessment and Trauma Response. So doing some trauma-informed practice pieces. And of course, you're seeing lots of different things coming out of the woodwork this year. Kevin is a guy that predominantly works with schools and trauma issues and things like that. Like, of course, unfortunately, school shootings, the one that happened at Tabor, Alberta, and then the one up at Laloche. But of course, he's also been called in to help out with many different situations as well. And Kevin Geringer being a superintendent of schools and also the president of the Humboldt Broncos at the time of the accident. One of the first calls was to this Kevin Cameron, so he was boots on the ground helping that community through that. What he has said with this whole thing to do with COVID and that what we're seeing is a bunch of different things. And he said what you see is that for a lot of people, they had an immediate trauma response where COVID first kind of became real to them when it hit in their province or their community or whatever, and went up, and then most people, the anxiety dropped back off after that first wave. And he said, if you watch it, the anxiety in some people has gone up and down with each wave. He said, for some people, the anxiety went up and continued all the way across. He said, for those people, he said, it's a post-traumatic response to something else that they've had. So we're dealing with all of these types of things in our communities. And when you're dealing with groups of students, or whether you're dealing with groups of hockey players, you're going to be dealing with those important things. So his response is, when people get talking about kids are behind, he said, say, yes, they may be behind where they would have been had things been normal. But we're all working through our very first worldwide pandemic. So it's that whole piece of the entire world is doing this. So we need to continue to support the people, how we support them, and that real important piece of just being trauma informed. One of the other real interesting things that came out of it was he has talked about the impaired closeness distance cycle. And in all of our relationships, we have a closeness distance cycle to it, starting right when we were young. And what happened, of course, is as an infant, you need your parent for everything. And then as you get a little older, you want that distance. But then, of course, when the distance gets too great, then you want to be together again. In all relationships, that closeness distance cycle works. He said with the lockdown, we were all forced into a closeness cycle. And he said for some people, that closeness cycle, even in healthy family relationships, that forced closeness cycle and been around somebody, you start to feel potentially that you are okay. If that person says another thing to me, I'm going to lose it, and so you need that distance piece. And so what we're finding or seeing with students was those students whose parents, one parent may work away or that sort of thing, it actually repaired those relationships. That closeness is what that child needs. And so for last school year, they were excelling, and when they got back to school, it was great for them. This school year, when things have gone back to normal, a little more normal, and their parent is now working away again, and the distance is getting too great for them again, they're acting out. And so what they're seeing is a 500% increase in crisis or trauma response out of students year over year, that it's the highest we've ever had. And I was about to say to them, you don't have to tell us that. We see that currently, and it's not just in the children, it's in the adults as well, in the community, that this closeness distance cycle piece. So a little bit of a rant, Kim, sorry on that, but it's when you said that, it's that whole idea of we're all working our way through our first worldwide pandemic, I think is a pretty important thing to remember.
I think I'll maybe touch back on one thing that Michael mentioned there about, the players are always about, hey, we want to win. Of course, we're all about that as athletes and coaches, but as Wally is so often heard saying, and he's dead on correct, the important part for all coaches to realize is the more you talk about the outcome of a game and the result, the more you're getting in the way of the players being able to perform at their best. Yeah, I'm not sure where it came from, Wally, originally, but Wally's, I'm sure it's not Wally's thing, but the thing he likes to promote is the what's important now sort of anagram, win, W-I-N. And we really put a lot of emphasis on this with the women in Denmark. Sort of came to us again in the qualifier. I was sitting before the game, we talk a lot about focusing on process and focusing on your next shift, your next battle, your next race, your next block shot. Don't worry about the result. All we want to do is play our best, play our hardest, and then we're winners no matter what, because we don't control the results. But sitting before the German game, I looked across at one of the assistants. They said, hey, what is win in Danish if you were going to translate it? And I put it in the chat, and it comes out the initials HEVN. And he's like, yeah, it kind of looks like heaven in English. I'm like, oh, how perfect is that? If we all focus on what's important now and our next shift, our next battle, we end up in heaven at the end of the game. So it was kind of a funny moment, but one of those moments that kind of an aha moment. And now obviously we're sort of going to be sticking that on the board at every opportunity. Like, let's focus on getting to heaven and just playing our best and giving our best effort, and then we're all winners. We all get so lost sometimes in wanting to win, and it ties everybody up in knots. You just got to do your best. And I actually remember, Sammy, you probably remember, maybe you don't, but I remember very vividly in Malmö in 2015, as we were unfortunately on our way to opening the Pandora's box and having the U.S. win their first world championship ever, even though we never got scored on in the whole tournament, which has never ever happened before. But I remember in a team meeting trying to get that message across, and the message back was, no, we are Canada. We have to win. And I'm like, I get that. Like, it's an expectation. We have to win, but put it over there. Lock it away. Don't think about it. Think about what you need to do right now to help us win, to help us to get to that result. And that's, again, your next shift, your next battle, your next block shot, your next forecheck, your next back check, whatever it is. So
I want to say I also remember the trip vividly, and I remember our team going to Copenhagen and me attempting as an engineer to explain to my teammates how tunnels were built through the ocean or under the ocean. That was just like mind blowing too.
For those who don't know, there's I don't know how long it is. It's a 3 or 4 or 5 mile tunnel and bridge combination that links Malmö, Sweden, where the championship was, to Copenhagen. So it's quite an engineering feat.
Quite an engineering feat, but one that I was attempting to explain in the darkness on a bus to 20 other athletes was
non-engineering athletes at that.
Right. Kim would have got it.
Yeah.
No, I'm related to engineers, but I am not one. I just know a bunch. My dad would have loved it though, Sammy. He probably would have corrected you, actually, if you got anything wrong.
He would have actually had the theory. We would have had a chalkboard out probably and been drawing it up. Anyways, I digress, Tim. I do remember that vividly. I remember that 2006 team in particular being so good that winning was the expectation, and we did win. So that was it's a tough lesson to get across when the team is victorious, to remember all those other things, right? And I'm sure from a coaching staff that was kind of difficult at times, because to me that was one of the strongest Team Canada's, and maybe vice versa, one of the weaker American opponents that we had throughout the year. So you guys could have put any lineups out there. You guys could have done almost anything as coaches and won. So how do you impart those words of wisdom, or maybe those life lessons that are so integral for us as people later in life, when winning kind of came easier than perhaps other years?
Yeah, and it's, I would totally agree that in that 2005, 2006 year, we were deeper, we were better in really every respect, and all due respect to the U.S. team. They had a terrific top 6 forward group. Their top line was arguably more skilled than ours, but we were deeper through the group. We were deeper on the blue line. I felt we were better in goal, but they were good enough, and it's a great lesson. They were good enough to slap us in the face a couple of times, and in particular, New Year's Eve in Winnipeg, we did not play our best, and they beat us 5-1 or 5-2, and it was a good wake-up call just in time, a month ahead of leaving for Torino, for us to redouble our efforts and really focus on what's important now, like just doing the work. So even, and really, especially, I guess, if you're the better team, especially important to take and make all the effort as coaches to get your team focused on the effort details of the game, because really the only way a lesser team is going to beat you if they outwork you and get a little bit of puck luck. And if you outwork them, you're taking that element away from them. So that's, that's so important, as we all know. Go ahead, Wally.
Um, I was just Barry hasn't. I don't know if Barry's still on.
Yeah, looks like he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before like when I talked to Barry a couple of weeks ago when I was going through everything with our situation, and Tim, I'm going to talk to you some more about the acronym WIN, and that actually came from Lou Holt's presentation. I'll share it with everybody here because Lou was speaking at a football conference, and I didn't go to the conference, but one of the coaches in our city came back and told me about it. And he used this W.I.N as an acronym, what is important now. And with his team at Notre Dame, they qualified for the Rose Bowl. And the question was that he asked everybody as you've qualified for the Rose Bowl, what do you think I did? What do you think he did? Because there's like a exam period and almost 3 weeks off in the season, and what he did, most coaches would do more video, maybe make sure of practice, maybe they'd spend times interviewing and doing some of the team building stuff. But what he did was they never did anything like for 2 of those weeks. It was all about the studies, the perspective of what they were there for and what they were doing. And then, Tim, when you told the story of that and connected it to the Danish word, I don't know how to pronounce it, heaven, that is the great perspective that I've come to grip with now. And that's the reality of everything that we do every day is we forget about the end, the real end. And if you live for that, I think you're going to be a pretty happy person and get more out of life. But Barry, you are going to come on and talk about your experience at a later date in a formal session with getting back on the bench again and as a mentor, taking over a team, provincial under 18 team, I believe, from Alberta that got to the gold medal final. And your experience in terms of what Tim's talked about in terms of the stages that we all go through in competition. And Barry, I'm just curious, you've been sitting back hearing it all, what you might have to add to the conversation here.
Yeah, thanks, Wally. I don't have my camera on. I've been doing a couple other things, but listening as it's been going on. Certainly, I guess listening to Tim's story about what ended up almost happening with a mutiny on the Bounty, in a way surprises me the amount of work, Tim, that you and Peter put in over the last few years with the players. And again, what I do in my real job is trying to help teams not ever have to get to that point where, suddenly there's unrest. Both doing the mentorship piece with the planning and preparation of it, but also at the end of the day, doing the mental performance with the players, I think really ends up helping me to be able to shed light, like there's a buffer between the players and myself. And I think it ends up at the end of the day sometimes solving a whole bunch of problems. So, going back even to the Winter Games a couple of years ago, working with Carla and her staff and some of the things that were going on, and similar in some ways to what every team does go through. But it's just surprising that, you put that much time and effort into it and suddenly it's almost ready to explode because of some things that, as coaches, we forget or we sort of overlook or do whatever. And listening to some of the others in talking this morning, the most important part of it all, and I think we all forget it at different times, is it's the players. Like, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help them to get the best out of the event, to get the most out of them. And we get caught up sometimes with tactical things or other things that come up. And at the end of the day, it'll bite us in the butt. I don't want to say too much about my experience. Wally wants me to talk about it more another time, so I'll just sort of leave it at that. That with our under 18 girls and having to take over a month before, the first game was a little rusty on the bench, got better as it went, but because I had done the mentorship piece before, we were pretty well planned and organized going in, and just making sure that all the girls knew. So I made calls to every one of the girls early on to let them know what was going on. There was going to be a change. We talked to the staff, and then sort of went from there. So we really ended up trying to reach the players themselves. And again, they're younger than the ones that you're working with too, Tim. So that probably has something to do with it, where you want to give them, if anything, more rather than less information as early as possible. The other one that we did is we enlisted 2 parents that became our liaisons, and they took care of everything for the parents. Really proud of our parents at the event. They were the most vocal. They dressed up every game. I did a session with them on how to be a positive parent at an event. Went through a whole bunch of different scenarios. Some of them had been through it already before, but we made sure that they understood what was going on. I talked to them about kids earning ice time, and they'd all get a chance to do power play, penalty kill, and play. And we basically rolled 4 lines for 4 games, 2 periods, and 16 minutes. At the end, there was 2 defensemen that were a little nervous about playing in the last couple minutes of the gold medal game and in the overtime, so we didn't put them back out, and it was their request, not ours. And we did fairly well with playing everybody. So the parents were happy. Nobody bitched about their daughter being the best player on the team and not getting enough ice time. Nobody complained about being the weakest player on the team and not getting the ice time either. I told them we were going to go and either win or lose with 20 players, not with 5 or 6 or a good goalie or whatever it happens to be. So it can work. It takes a lot of work, and especially at minor hockey. But what others have been saying this morning, the importance of getting the parents on board, being transparent, doing what Wally does with all of his mission statement things. We did that with our parents, what the success looked like, did it with the players, did it with the staff, put it all together. So everybody knew going in exactly where we were standing with it all. So pretty simple stuff. But at the end of the day, clarity's there, and everybody comes away happy. Wally, you had something in your office years ago. If you're nothing without a gold medal, you're nothing with one. And I firmly believe in that, even though, we came up short from the guys and girls side this year. I think the event for both teams going through COVID and having them fight through all of that and us having to work with them turned out to be very positive. We ended up playing in the last game and had a great event out of it. So hopefully that sort of shares a little bit and helps out.
I hope I can, thanks, Barry. I hope I can get on when you talk about your experience. I'd be very interested to hear that, as always. I just wanted to interject really quickly, Wally, that's interesting about what's important now coming from Lou Holtz, because when I was coaching in Medicine at my first head coaching job, the trainer there, the equipment guy who many of the Calgarians would know, Doug Ball, who was just a terrific human being and a really savvy, intelligent hockey guy. He gave me a Lou Holtz video. And one of the things that Lou Holtz talked about in that video, which I've used over and over and over again, is the fact that with all of his teams, or many of his teams, he had one team rule, and that was it. Most of us get bogged down and can't do this, don't do that, we want you to do this, we don't want you to do that, and it's really, really cumbersome. But he had one team rule that was all inclusive and really self-governing, and that was his one team rule was do what's right, avoid what's wrong, and never do anything to hurt the team. And that was it. And if players really took that to heart and internalized it, it would sort of self-correct a lot of personal problems. And of course, with young people, it's the it's the process of stopping and thinking in those terms in any particular moment. But you can imagine how many great teaching moments he might have had if something went off the rails and he said, well, was it right? Was it wrong? If you're not sure about those two things, did it hurt the team? And really pretty simple evaluation process. So really interesting that the win thing came from Lou as well. Obviously a tremendous coach and a good human being too. So really interesting.
Tim, I had my hand up to get back to your experience and some of the things you want to take on. Thank you for sharing the Lou Holtz edition. But let's get back on track on your personal experience. And I'm glad we have everybody else to get engaged. But you're moving forward, and unlike Team Canada and Team USA, who are fully centralized, true athletes committed to training and formal guidance for a 4-year period, there are a number of teams there that don't have that luxury, and yours is definitely one of them. So just go ahead, Tim, wherever you want on it. I woke up, got up at 4 a.m. and watched your final. I agree the broadcasters were very much in the German side of things in their broadcasting. And when you scored the goal in the late in the second period, they seemed to dominate in the second, pretty even in the first, but they were very dominant in the second. And that goal appeared to change the complexion of the game. And you were the far better team. So
it really did, Wally. And Peter and I were talking about the game after, and what we're going to do going forward. And he thought, and who's to know, he may be right. He thought, maybe we need to redouble our efforts, conditioning wise. We looked a little out of sync at times in that game. And I said, Peter, that might be, but from my seat, it was a really good example of, again, the mental part of the game. I really felt like, yes, like the Germans pushed really hard in the second period. And I think we aided and abetted that effort. We made a couple of pretty bad puck decisions in the middle part of the second period and got stuck for 2 or 3 long shifts, which, can take the wind out of your sails. But they were the better team, and they knew they needed to win by 6 really to go to Beijing. They scored once, they scored twice, and they really started to push. And then the game shifted. When we were able to score with like 30 seconds left in the second period, whatever it was, wow. Like what a mental energy shifting moment where we were now back where we needed to be. They were in a bit of a deeper hole, and we were able to come out in the third period and really control the third period. We had 4 or 5 real good chances to score early in the third, and finally tied it up on what was clearly a pretty lucky bounce and some puck luck. But we felt we were deserving. We didn't have much puck luck at Worlds. We could easily have beaten Japan when we lost 1-0. And so our mantra is always just keep pushing. The hockey gods are testing us. Like we were not getting the puck luck. We got to outwork them in order to get some puck luck. And in the end, we did get some very fortunate puck luck with that tying goal in Fussen. And even, I salute the Austrian team. They played extremely well. And their upset of Germany in the first game was instrumental in our getting through to Beijing. I fully complimented the German coaches after their game. Their girls played a terrific game, work ethic wise, execution wise, in the face of really a lot of faint hope. Like they had to beat us by 6, and we all know how unlikely that is, especially in the female game. But they played hard, they played well, and until there was that kind of psychological letdown when we scored and got ourselves back in the game. Like it was an impressive performance by them. I really felt. So lots of psychology in the game as well. Just a really good experience all the way around.
Tim, you
Yeah.
talked about, you communicated with me, and my understanding watching that 4 o'clock in the morning game was that if you got to overtime, you won. You never, I don't know that in the email at that time, you communicated to me that Germany had to win by 6. I wasn't aware of that until you got home. And I guess the lesson here with Barry and anybody who goes to tournaments with clubs, say, what are the rules of how you finish in terms of wins, losses, 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, and how do you keep on top of that in something like you went through? And then now you're going to go to the Olympics. Are the rules different? Can you comment the importance of that in preparation? And because I've been guilty, like most of us, when you're in that situation, then you run to the package you've been given with all the rules laid out. So,
yeah, well, certainly it's incumbent as us as coaches to know what needs to be done or not done in a tie-breaking type of game like that. And obviously every tournament is a little bit different. Every tournament has their own rules, but it was pretty clear to us that there were all kinds of scenarios. There could have been a 2-way tie, there could have been a 3-way tie, and what's important. But going into the German game, I think I might have explained, Wally, before you got on this morning, we knew, like it was pretty funny. After we beat Austria 1-0, we had 2 chances in that game to score an empty net goal, which would have been huge for us. We hit the post or the side of the net. But again, it's a coaching thing and a coaching decision. Like we knew that 1 goal could have been a real difference maker, like an empty net goal. And the Austrian coaches also knew that. So we talked about before our game about all the scenarios. They said, hey, you know what? Even in the German game, if we're up 2-0 or 3-0, say after 2 periods, maybe the German team, or if they're up 2 or 3-0, even though they're winning the game, maybe the German team realizes and the coach realizes, hey, we got to win by 6. Maybe they start pulling their goalie at every opportunity in the 3rd period to try to get to that 6-goal differential. There were so many different things going on, but I did say to Peter and the other coaches after the Austrian game, man, I hope that goalpost on the open net situation, which would have given us a 2-0 win instead of a 3-0 one, doesn't come back to haunt us, and it really could have. So it's incumbent on us as coaches to kind of know, obviously, what the situation is and what the tiebreakers are, and what you might need or not need to do at the end of a game for your team. So, but yeah, we knew we just had to get to overtime, and we were winners. And as we talked about, the girls clearly knew that at the end of the game, and we discussed as coaches, should we bring them into the loop, or do we want to have them kind of focus on what's important now and just on their effort and what they got to do to help us get there? But they clearly knew as soon as that buzzer went that we were going to Beijing. So, and Sammy thought maybe social media played a big part of that, and the internet, that they all knew exactly what we needed to do and what Germany needed to do to get through. So,
well, it's interesting. Tom, I don't know if you're on or.
Yeah, he's still on, I think.
Okay.
Patiently listening, as always, or often.
Well, my first year helping Tom, I went with him to the last game, and we weren't sure of the rule interpretation for that standing, and it's really important to try to figure that out beforehand. And I've been guilty one of those. I don't get caught up with those details because it's a distraction, and I play to win the game to begin with. And those other details, although you know them, sometimes I begin worrying about them and thinking about them and not able to coach. So, Tom, how are things going with you? You're back on track for league games this weekend?
Yeah, we play. We go to Nate on Saturday. It's been. We only played 3 games this half because they wanted to push it back as far as they could. About the COVID. So we play a regular schedule last half. We've, the recruiting without being able to watch anybody because people weren't playing. I end up with 8 forwards and 8 defensemen and 3 goalies. And now one of my goalies had to go home for a personal reason. Apparently she has a child and has to fight for to keep her child. So anyway, she's not coming back. But kind of pretty well had to go, I think, to the torpedo because use those defensemen, up front as the halfbacks, this kind of thing. And all October, we basically we're missing 6 or 7 players with injuries, so we're practicing with 10 players. So it's been quite the challenge, but it's a real good group of kids. So, just do what we can.
Tim, what's your schedule relative to working with your team preparing for the Olympics? Anything special? More time, more commitment, or?
Well, and I meant to touch back on that, Wally, because you brought it up before. Like we definitely don't have the time with our team that Canada, the U.S. do for sure. But even a lot of the other European teams will have, I think, several weeks of preparation before the games. We won't have that luxury. We have a lot of girls that are obviously deeply involved with schoolwork and some pretty key people who are in the working world. And they had to take a month off work for the World Championship in August. They had to take 2 weeks off work for the disqualifier period. We're hoping that we will have a week-long camp right before Christmas during the international window where we hope to play 2 or 3 games, but some of the girls won't be able to get off work, so we'll have to, instead of practicing twice a day and then playing maybe 2 or 3 games, we'll have to try to play the games in the evening, so ones that are working can maybe get to the games and are close by. And so we have limited time, but we'll have a week-long camp there before Christmas, and then I'm not sure what the formal plan is in terms of going over to Beijing. I hope we have 5 days to a week with the girls in Copenhagen before we leave, and then we'll be over in Beijing for a week, 8 days beforehand. But I don't even know what the isolation restrictions might be on arrival in Beijing, and not sure what they might be before arrival to Beijing. So those are all details still to be worked out. So it is a bit of a challenge, but again, we're just going to focus on being the best we can be and giving our best effort, given the situation we have. And we're in even though we're in the bottom half of the pool, Canada, U.S., Finland, Russia, Switzerland in the top pool at Beijing, and we're in the bottom of the second pool with the Czechs, really good, really skilled, very skilled, deep group. Japan, really, really well organized, skilled group. Sweden, who are a terrific group as well, really, really skilled as a group. And even though they were relegated a few years ago to the B pool, they're still really belong in the top 10 A group. And China, who have 8 or 9 North Americans, they're going to be a real good team as well. So we've got our hands full in Beijing, and even more reason for us to focus on not the results so much, but just giving our best effort every game. And if we do that and we get good goaltending, then we're more than capable of winning a couple of games and maybe grabbing a quarterfinal berth. So It's kind of like the situation going into the World Championship, but a little more difficult with tougher
Do the
competition
top
still.
4 teams continue?
It'll be the same as at Worlds, where um, you know, the A pool will play a round robin, and they all get to the quarterfinal. And the B pool will play a round robin, 4 games, and the top 3 teams in the B pool will get quarterfinal berths. So if we could win 2 games, then we would then we would very likely end up playing Canada or the U.S. in a quarterfinal, which we would be more than happy to do, of course. But so yeah, so all the A pool teams get to the quarterfinal, and the top 3 teams in the B pool get to a quarterfinal. Same as that World Championship.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I've got some stuff to do today and gonna have to run, but Tim, thanks very much for coming on. When Barry comes on in his short term talking about his experience, which to me, that's the beauty of being involved with Hockey Alberta and Hockey Canada. Hockey Canada in not an Olympic year, but it's all about everything sort of planning and short term and what do you do when. And Barry's experience is something that it's planned with the program of excellence. It's a part of being educated in the process. And I really believe that Barry's experience, like many of us coaching in those scenarios for a province and mentoring in those scenarios, Barry's experience there, I just think it just has so much to offer. Tim, what you've been doing, your whole background of experience, and I'm really glad Mike came on, Benelli, and Jordan's still coaching the minor hockey scene. I think the messaging here of what you do at the elite level and the maintenance of perspective, and Barry mentioned how they roll the lines except maybe for the last game or the last period of the last game and got to the gold medal final. And I think it's just an example of what people can learn about the process and staying with the process. So anything else to add, Jordan? Tom, that you got on your mind you want to bring up? Flames are on a roll, or they're playing hockey I like to watch. I don't see body language. I don't see attitudes on the ice. I see consistent effort. So anybody else got? Tom, you go to the games here in Calgary. What's your thoughts?
Well, I don't get to go to too many games because Tuesday, Thursday they play and we have the late practice. I've been to about 2 or 3. I really like the way they always work. They work really hard, and that's the point. They're always hard to beat. Like, I mean, they only scored 1 goal the other day, but they only gave up 1 goal. And they're in every game, and they're a lot more fun to watch than when half the team was going and half the team wasn't going. So, and as far as my team goes, we got to work on installing belief in themselves. So,
Yeah,
It's the biggest thing.
Tim, I got a question here because you played the NHL, coach of the NHL at every level. How can Daryl Sutter, who I'm gathering is the consummate old school coach, achieve what he achieves at this level pretty consistently?
I think I know Daryl. I know most of the Sutters and don't know Daryl real well. But for starters, salt of the earth people. They're honest with their players. I've never been in a locker room with Daryl, but some people would say brutally honest. And but I think what comes shining through with him is A, he's an intelligent hockey guy. B, He's direct and honest with the players, which all players really respect and want. We all have different ways of maybe delivering that, but I think that's the essence of his success. Is he's a good person, he's a caring person, he's a passionate hockey person, he's a knowledgeable hockey person, and he's direct and honest with his players. And so even though, I'm sure, as on every team, I'm sure there's some players in the locker room thinking, well, I'm not sure I like the way we're doing this or that, but he's able to sell and market it to them. He's had success, and so they buy in. And, I think it just comes down to that, and some honesty, integrity, some basic hockey knowledge, and being a good person. It's really, really important.
I asked Rico about him, because he's coached with him a lot.
Yeah.
And I know the perception everybody has is that he plays a trap and old, he does all the modern team play stuff. But I asked, Rico just said he just insists on hard work, and he talks about hard work all the time. And that's his mantra. And he sells it, and everything's based on it. And I guess his practices are short and very difficult. And so Rico says nothing special. He just pushes hard work all the time, and that's what he wants the players to do. And that's something you can do as a player.
And I think that's a great point, Tom. And I think the most important part of that, and probably Wally, and again, maybe one of the keys to his success is there are lots of coaches out there that preach hard work all the time. The key piece is the accountability part. And I think he's really good at identifying somebody who's maybe lacking in the work ethic part, and then B, holding them accountable by bringing that to light, and most importantly, maybe reducing ice time or changing their role if they don't comply. And that's what I think that's a sticking point for a lot of coaches is, hey, Jordan Fenton's our best player. I can't reduce his role from a top line to a third or fourth line role, because then we won't win, because Jordan's going to score for us. Well, what Daryl does, as he clearly has done, is, hey, if you're not working, if you're not doing this, if you're not doing that, I can't have you on our first line. You got to earn your stripes. And I think in a nutshell, that's probably what Daryl does extremely well. And again, I think every player understands that, recognizes that, and feels that accountability, and that's where his success lies.
I just repeat that. I'm looking at Shillington and the Finnish kid who isn't playing now. He's the guy Välimäki. And I've always liked when Shillington came in at the very first practice, I really liked him. I thought he had off the chart skating and pretty good hockey sense. And he's been hanging around a long time. And to see Daryl incorporate him into the role that he morphed into to build that belief and confidence, and he has to deal with others who might be upset about they're not getting that role. He really does an amazing job at that kind of thing, and it boils down to honesty and hard work and accountability. Those words you mentioned, Tim. And years ago, when the Sutters were playing and you were skating at conditioning camps, we used to do over and backs. They were called wallies, where you do push-ups and sit-ups in between in 5 sets. And we also would do 2 hard laps and make sure you finish to the end. And I related that I call it the Sutter drill. When you do 2 hard laps, and if you send your players on 2 hard laps, Jordan, at practice, watch where they start and watch to see how many finish where they started from. And the point made is the real serious players, they need that message is you go past that line. And the Sutters always went past that line. There was just no question, but it's something that I think average players have to learn. You got to push yourself to be better than you were, and they know how to do that. It's amazing. So much respect for the family and for what they've achieved in the game, and it's the values, the work ethic and the respect, the honesty, the accountability. It's everything we want to see in our kids. So kudos to Sutter and Tim. At the 1 hour and 29-minute point of this session, I'm going to edit this and this part out. And Tom's thoughts, your thoughts, I'm definitely going to throw it out to the public and to the Flames. I hope they can keep it up. And Daryl can maintain his approach and the players keep buying in because they deserve a better result. Yeah.
And I might add for all the minor coaches out there, again, something we've talked about a lot in the past. It's so easy for us as coaches to look for players who maybe are being what we consider lazy or not utilizing the work ethic that we want. But our approach with the Danish team from day one has been to look for the examples of work ethic that we want the team to embody, whether it's F1 with their feet moving on the forecheck, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 people giving us a great 100, 200-foot feet moving back check effort, whether it's winning a race to the puck by just sheer will, whether it's winning a battle, blocking a shot. Like, that's where your focus needs to be as a coach, is recognizing and rewarding those type of effort plays, because and almost every video session before almost every game, we include those races, those battles, those back check, those forecheck executions, those block shots, because everybody wants to be on those videos. And by looking for the positive examples to reinforce and openly acknowledge, you get more of it and you get the buy-in. Yeah. So
just related to minor hockey, Tim, what you're talking about, it's elite. It's what the best coaches do. But the problem in minor hockey, coaches don't do that. They do what is the poorest excuse in coaching: shorten the bench. They pick the best players. They put them on the power play very early. Everybody falls into said roles. And they manage the bench for the result, not development, especially in the first half of the season. Players don't feel a part of the team. So they're creating entitled players. Drafted players are entitled players. They play junior A, and they might get 3-minute shifts, and they might also get double shifted on the point on power play if they're a forward. And I talked to Darryl Belfry about Sam Steele playing in the Memorial Cup, and that's the way they coach, and that's the way minor hockey coaches coach for the end result. And to me, you're not developing character, qualities, life skills that the teams that do win will, develop because they coach the right way. So that's sort of the message I'm going to edit out of this. It's going to be just a pretty good 10-minute edit that I'll share privately, and I'll share the full thing. But thanks a lot, guys, for coming on. And next weekend, I've got an appointment on Thursday. But Tim, I hope you can initiate a call. And if you wanted to bring Barry on, I'll talk to you when I get back from my hometown. And Barry might want to come on because it's that short-term thing. There might be takeaways for you and your environment relative to the tidbit meetings you have. When I did the curriculum for Hockey Canada, I revised it for a year, and it was too long. I was told to reduce it. So there were actually 8 practices, Jordan, in the POE program at the tryout camps when you got down to 40, and then when you got down to 20, until you went to the games, and your actual number of practices was 8 times. So I designed 8 practices because the powers to be, it was too complicated. And I thought in the female program, coaches could experiment with the large curriculum. But I've got those 8 practice plans for short-term competition. And of course, I'm not sure what's being done with them, but it's all about getting better and keeping on swimming. So thanks very much, everybody. And Tim, thank you very much for giving me a ride last night. I can drive today, so
Great.
I'm good to go and pick up meds. I had some good news today. I had a liver ultrasound, and I got a letter today said it's negative. Everything is good, so that's the first good
Awesome.
news in a while.
Awesome. And
That's
sort
great,
of
Wally.
Yeah, and also next week, before you jump off, I'm in Ontario, and I may or may not be able to get on, but if I can, I certainly will. I'd love to hear. So whenever Barry gets on, be sure you record it, Wally, because I would love to hear about his experience. So this was good. Thanks for listening, guys, and everybody else out there. And I'm glad I got back on.
Congratulations, Tim.
Been out. Thanks very much, Tom. It feels really good. I feel very. I mean, I actually emailed Doug Dirks yesterday and said, "Hey, Doug, you're usually on the Olympic coverage, and it's such a terrific story. First time for Denmark in the Olympics, both men and women. Really great experience, and we've got 4 or 5, maybe 6 girls who 8 years ago were playing in the sea pool. And now they're going to the Olympics. It's a terrific story if somebody at CBC wants to run with it. So it'd be interesting to see if they want to take us up on that. But thanks a lot, guys. It's been good news story.
Try global as well, because Linda Olsen, she's from Danish descent.
Oh, is she?
Danish. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to let her know too then. Okay, we'll see you. Hopefully see you next week, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, see ya.
Okay, see ya. Take care.
Just call Wally if you need anything.